10 years ago, almost every small town in America had a regional MMA promotion, gyms full of hungry prospects, and a clear path to the big show. Today, those gyms are gone. The promotions are dead. The gyms are full of hobbyists doing cardio kickboxing classes, all while UFC is raking in record breaking $5.8 billion revenue targets. The sport didn't just change, it was deliberately, the developmental ladder was deliberately dismantled to fund a corporate content factory. This video is how TKO Group has caused the death of grassroots MMA and why Dana has become a cruise control CEO who cares more about power slap and Zuffa boxing than putting a decent ranked fighter on a Saturday night card. So let's get into it. Here's the sentence that should make every lifer in the sport sick. As the UFC slashes card quality, abandons the international market that built the brand, and locks more than half of all global events inside a single building in Enterprise, Nevada, its financial bottom line is stronger than at any point in combat sports history. This is not a sport being mismanaged. This is a sport being harvested. TKO does not need your loyalty. Paramount already paid. Saudi already paid. The tourism board in Perth already paid. The algorithms already priced the nosebleeds at $1,000 before a real fan ever saw them. What TKO cannot survive, the only thing that has ever moved this company is competition, real, funded, fighter-respecting competition. This is why the last third of this video is not a eulogy. It is a call to get behind MVP and behind Scott Coker's new promotion before the next decade of MMA is just another Apex Tuesday and Saturday. If you want to understand how we got here, let's stop talking about Dana's personality and start talking about the calendar. There are three eras. Era number one, expansion, 2014 to roughly 2020. The UFC was a touring promotion. They visited 34 different US states. They hit Brazil 24 times, the UK 14 times, Australia 13 times. They were building pay-per-view buy-in and regional broadcast strength the old way by showing up. Denver, Portland, Seattle, Raleigh, Oklahoma City, Pittsburgh, St. Louis. These were not accidents. These were the farm system with tickets. Era 2, the pandemic pivot, 2020 to 2021-ish. Give the devil his due. The Apex was a brilliant operational play. It saved combat sports during lockdown. No arena rental, no travel, no state tax circus. Fight Island and the Apex kept fighters paid when the rest of live sports were ghost town. Nobody serious argues that. But then Era 3, the permanent monopolization, 2022 to 2026. This is the crime. TKO locked in 58% plus of all global events at the Apex. 220 plus cards in that building in that 4-year span, or maybe the 6-year span between 2020 and 2026, to eliminate venue rent, travel, and state tax overhead forever and ever. COVID ended. The touring company did not come back. They abandoned the core market that built the brand, Brazil, the UK, Australia, regional America, in favor of zero overhead in Las Vegas soundstage broadcasts and high-yield foreign suite subsidies. Now, that's the problem, guys. Nobody argues that the pivot to the Apex, building the Apex and Fight Island during COVID, nobody's arguing that that wasn't a great move by the UFC. That kept the sport going. It gave people something to watch in the pandemic. That was a good thing. The problem is what it led to, what it showed the corporate suits. The problem, they never came back from that. They kept putting on show after show after show in the Apex. They stopped traveling. They stopped caring about the markets that got them there. They started wealth extraction, and they started using the Apex as leverage. That's what most people miss. Most people think it's purely just, oh, we use the Apex because it's cheaper. That's part of the equation, but they literally use it as like a negotiation tactic, like leverage, and we're going to get into that. But it's crazy what this has become. And I want to talk about these numbers in a little bit more detail, because in that 2014, we're working on 6-year timelines. I wanted to highlight the 6 years before we got to this last 6 years that has been bad. So we're going on a 2014 to 2020 timeline, and then the 2020 to 2026, now timeline. So from 2014 to 2020, they went to Brazil 24 times. They had 24 events in Brazil. That's 3.4 a year. They went to Rio, Sao Paulo, Brasilia, Fortaleza. Is that right? Fortaleza, that's it. Guess how many times they've went to Brazil from 2020 to 2026 to now in this time frame? They've went to Brazil 4 times. They've had 4 events in Brazil in this last 6 years compared to 24 the 6 years before that. That is 0.5 a year. That is an 83% collapse in Brazil events. That market helped build the UFC, and we're completely ignoring it. Here's some reasons for the shift. Weak currency. They have a weak currency and abandoned unless heavily subsidized. The thing is, they won't go to a place unless that place pays them a tremendous amount of money. Let's look at England and the UK. 2014 to 2020, 14 events. That's 2 a year. London, Manchester, Glasgow. Guess how many events in England and the UK in 2020 to 2026? 6. That's 0.8 a year. That is down 57%. Used to be a routine fight night base. Now it's only reserved for like high ticket sale pay-per-view events for occasional, UK stars. 57% decrease. 83% for Brazil. Let's look at Australia. 2014 to 2020, 11 events. That's 1.6 a year. Sydney, Melbourne, Perth. In this last 6 years, 2020 to 2026, 5 events. That is 0.7 a year. That's down 55%. So we've got 55%, 57%, and 83%. And again, the Australia thing is reserved for just occasional big ticket pay-per-view events where Perth will pay them a huge subsidy to come to their city. Mexico, 2014 to 2020, 5 events, including UFC 180 and 188. 2020 to 2026, 2 events. They used to go to Mexico and live local touring, but has now been replaced by UFC Noche events, not even held in Mexico anymore, just held in Las Vegas. Japan, 2014 to 2020, 4 events. Saitama Super Arena. 2020 to 2026, 0. Completely dead. Dropped that market. No visits since 2017. Legacy Asian market has been replaced by Road to UFC/Apex. Ireland, 2014 to 2020, 3 events. Dublin and the 3 Arena. 2020 to 2026, 0. Completely dead. Abandoned, despite the absolute crazed fan base during the peak of Conor era. They abandoned Ireland. Why? Because Ireland wouldn't pay them millions and millions and millions of dollars to come there. Brazil, the UK, and Australia together hosted 49 events across the core hubs in the expansion era, in that 2014 to 2020 era. In the Apex era, those 3 markets hosted 15. We went from 49 combined to 15 combined. Brazil alone is down about 83%. The country that once felt like UFC's second home. Japan, gone since 2017. Ireland, gone. Mexico touring, gone. The UK is no longer a fight night circuit. It's a luxury pay-per-view drop. They did the same thing to America. Nevada used to host about 22% of global events. T-Mobile, MGM Grand, the Pearl, now Las Vegas hosts 58% of all global UFC events. We went from about 22% to 58% of all global UFC events are hosted in Nevada. We've stopped touring the US too. Apex plus T-Mobile, those are the places they go now. Apex plus T-Mobile. Over 220 of them inside the Apex alone. In that 6 years, we have had over 220 events in the Apex. That's insane. 34 US states got live UFC. Now it is 14. So in that 2014 to 2020, there was 34 states that there was a UFC event held in. In the last 6 years, it has been 14 states that a UFC event has been held in. The major metro pay-per-view hubs: New York, Texas, Florida, California. The rest of the country watches Apex broadcast on TV. Denver, Portland, Seattle, Raleigh, Oklahoma City, which they did just go to Oklahoma City. I done this research, about 2 months ago. So they have went to Oklahoma City. But Pittsburgh, St. Louis, these were not flyover markets. Those were the places that made a kid in a warehouse gym believe the circus was coming to town and he would have a shot. When the circus stopped coming, the commission starved, the regional promotions died, and the kids started teaching 5:30 a.m. cardio kickboxing because that's what pays the rent. There was no more, I got to train, I got to keep a good promotional record because when the UFC comes to town, they'll look for local fighters and I might get a chance. That's gone. That's gone. That's dead. They killed it. Record profits and diluted product. Do not let anybody tell you the UFC is struggling. The product is struggling. The holding company is printing fucking money. TKO's full year 2026 guidance, raised after the second quarter, sits at $5.75 to $5.825 billion in revenue. Consolidated adjustment, EBITDA 2.275 to 2.305 billion. That is 40 to 50% profit margins on a combat sport. They returned over $1.3 billion to equity holders through share buybacks and dividends, then authorized another $1 billion buyback, directing profit into financial engineering rather than roster health insurance, pension, after-fight mental health, or baseline purses. Fighter revenue share is still trapped around 15 to 20%. The NFL, the NBA, MLB, 50-50. Through collective bargaining, the UFC uses monopsony control to enforce low purses because the fighters have no union and until this year, no credible rival promotions with money. There's nowhere else to go. That is the whole playbook. Guaranteed cash flow versus fan loyalty. The ESPN deal used to be the floor. Now it is paramount. A 7-year, $7.7 billion rights deal that started in January 2026. Foreign site fee subsidies from Saudi Arabia and Perth guarantee profit before a single ticket is sold. Regional fans who built the sport are no longer financially required. Let me say that again. You, me, us. We are no longer required. They don't care. When the network pays you anyways, the network pays regardless. Under guaranteed corporate rights deals, first the later ESPN years, now TKO and Paramount, the financial incentive model is completely inverted. They no longer sell individual pay-per-views or fight cards based on star power. They fulfill content hours to satisfy a flat rate broadcast contract. When the network pays you billions, regardless of whether 500,000 people watch or 50,000 people watch, you don't build fight cards for the fans. You build assembly lines for shareholders. 42 events a year. That is a quota. The check clears if the main event is 2 ranked killers or 2 guys who just won a contender series fight in a quiet warehouse on a Tuesday night a month ago. Fixed revenue, zero incentive to build deep, expensive cards. Dilution is not a bug. Dilution is an economic feature. Filling slots with raw 10 and 10 contender series prospects fulfills broadcast quotas at minimum payroll. This is how you complete the shift from elite sport to churn and burn content factory. If you started watching in 2015, you remember what a fight night felt like. In that 2014 to 2020 era, on a fight night card, there would be, on average, 6 to 10 ranked fighters. That's deep prelims, guys. Do you remember that? When there were 6 to 10 ranked fighters, that means top 15 fighters, 6 to 10 per card, just on a random fight night card. That was the average. In this era, 2020 to 2026, You want to know how many the average is ranked fighters on a card? 1 to 3. We went from 6 to 10 to an average of 1 to 3, often just being the main event or co-main event slots. The rest of the card filled with slop. In that 2014 to 2020 era, 95% of cards featured top 10 contenders or title eliminators in the main event. So 95% of main events were either top 10 in the rankings or title contenders. Just this year alone, in 2026, we have had 14 headliners outside the top 10. Let that sink in, guys. 2014 to 2020, 95% of main cards were fighters ranked in the top 10 or title eliminators. In this era, 2020 to 2026, just this year, we have had 14 headliners outside of the top 10. That is insane. So no, it's not in our imagination that the cards have fucking sucked lately. That is not made up in our heads like some people would have you believe. The sport is absolutely changing. The UFC is changing it. TKO is changing it. In 2014 to 2020, the roster pipeline looked like this. Regional champions from LFA, Cage Warriors, CFFFC, Jungle Fight, all these different promotions that were around, these good, King of the Cage, these good regional promotions that had good high tier, talent. I mean, think about some of these promotions like Conor McGregor, Paddy Pimblett. These guys came from Cage Warriors in the UK. And so many, I could make a list. So many of the elite roster that we enjoy watching comes from Cage Warriors, from LFA, from Jungle Fight, from CFFC. That's not how they get their fighters anymore, though. In this new era, 2020 to 2026, 35 to 40% of the roster is Dana White Contender Series fighters. 35 to 40% of the roster are Dana White Contender Series fighters fighting on 10-10 or 12-12, whatever, with 4-0 records, 5-1 records, whatever. The executive motivation in 2014 to 2020 was they must generate pay-per-view buys and TV ratings to secure revenue. Now, they're guaranteed $1.1 billion a year. They're guaranteed that check. Their main focus has shifted to Power Slap and Zuffa boxing and just getting absorbent site fees to go to certain places like Saudi Arabia and things like that. It's not wrong of us to call out the recent trash fight night cards and count the ranked fighters, count the headliners outside the top 10. This is not a slump. This is their new policy, and I'm calling it out. Let's talk about some pillars. Pillar 1, pay 'em pennies and bubblegum is what I call this pillar. Dana White's Contender Series is not a talent search. It is a corporate sweatshop designed to bypass regional fight pay. The execution is simple. Sign entry-level fighters on cheap 12-12 show-win contracts, throw them straight into fight night main cards, discard them if they go 1-2. The result, fan-favorite veterans get priced out or cut, replaced by 22-year-olds who won 1 3-round fight in a warehouse on a fucking Tuesday night. Instead of buying out established champions from LFA, CFFC, Titan FC, guys with 8 to 12 fight resumes against legitimate local competition, the UFC uses Dana White Contender Series to sign raw 4-0 or 5-1 prospects on non-negotiable 10-10 or 12-12 entry contracts. And because Dana White Contender Series is the primary functional funnel to the big show, young fighters are forced to perform to Dana in a quiet Apex studio, fighting hyper-aggressively to secure a contract rather than develop balanced, high-level martial arts skill sets. Style over development, highlight over craft. This is how you get a roster that looks explosive on a 30-second clip and hollow over 5 rounds. Pillar 2, the Apex and the Suit Machine. No arena rental, no regional marketing, zero gate reliance. The UFC Apex, now the Meta Apex, is a content factory that prints money by cutting production overhead to zero. Corporate apathy is the feature. The suits do not care if a card is boring or headlined by unranked flyweights. Paramount pays the rights fees regardless of quality. Dana will tell you they renovated it, bigger floor, seating up from a couple hundred to around 1,200. He wants a little city out there with hotels and a campus. Fine. That's not a studio. That's not a touring spot. This is a studio with a gift shop. Pillar 3, the Dana disconnect. This is the part the ride or die fans do not want to hear, but I'm going to fucking say it anyways. Dana White no longer acts as the shield or the fight promoter fighting for banger cards. He's lost all his interference. Executive energy has pivoted to power slap and Zuffa boxing while the UFC brand runs on automated cruise control. He is still the face. He's still the press conference. He's not the guy losing sleep over whether the prelims in Portland are going to make a new fan. That guy left the building around the time the guaranteed check got big enough that the card no longer had to. Now, guys, let's think about this in a little bit deeper detail. Think about just how apathetic Dana White has gotten. Half the time when the press asks him a question about certain fights on the press conference or if he can name the fights, he can't. And is, I don't give a fuck, or stupid fucking question. Like, come on, dude. You can't name the cards because it's filled with your contender series guys that nobody gives a fuck about. No offense. Not even you, though, Dana. You're preoccupied with power slap and Zuffa boxing. You're completely checked out. You don't give a fuck. And the thing that people miss about Dana, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, he's always just been the face. He didn't actually have all that much executive power. It was the guys behind the scenes. That's not true. That's not true. Dana, yes, he was the face, and that was his primary role, but he also had a major hand in the production values of things. He is the idea man. He is the heart and soul. He's the one who comes up with the harebrained scheme, but also he's the one that had input on the structure of the cards, and the Fertitta brothers, back when they owned it. All three of them together cared about fights. They wanted to see cool fights, banger fights, the best fights, ranked guys. They cared. And so when a corporate suit would say, oh, let's just throw a couple unranked guys in the main card and, make our Paramount money, whatever, the old Dana would have been, no, fuck that. We need to build this card. We need to take this show on the road. We need to do this fight card in, Raleigh, Carolina, or somewhere on the road, and put together a banger card filled with people from the top 15, top to bottom, and, a few, talented local guys. And now he doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care. He's left the building. His answers are short on press conferences. He doesn't like, being asked questions about the fights or the fighters or anything, because he just wants to get the fuck out of there and just go back to power slapping his wife or what. I'm sorry. That was uncalled for, but power slap and Zuffa boxing, he's completely checked out. So Dana's main goal, or not goal, but his main purpose back when UFC was awesome, was he ran interference on stupid suit corporate decisions. He doesn't do that anymore because he doesn't care. He's just, whatever, do what you want. And it shows. He's not really involved in the matchmaking anymore. He's not involved in day-to-day operations. Now he is just the face. And Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard and Hunter Campbell, they run things behind the scenes. And their instructions are clear from TKO. Just make us money. Just make our shareholders money. That's all we fucking care about. That's all. That's it. That's your job. That's your purpose. That's how you're going to get bonus checks. That's how we get bonus checks. Just pump out content for the cheapest price possible and make us a killing. That's the goal. That's where we're at. Now, I'm going to take a drink, so you guys just let that set in for a second. Got to wet the old whistle again. I've been ranting on. How are we doing on time? All right. Oh, guys, now would be a good time to throw in here. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. It helps me. And please stick around for the positive message. We always do a good positive mental health message at the end of these videos. So stick around for that. It's good for you to hear. And, spread it. Spread the word. Mental health is important. And I try to make these videos entertaining for you guys. So like, subscribe, it helps me out and it helps us spread that positive message and build this community. That said, let's get back into it. Now, the ultra luxury pivot. The UFC has transitioned from a blue collar live spectacle aimed at filling massive arenas to a high margin corporate package product that extracts maximum revenue per seat while squeezing out regional working class fans. Record-breaking live gates are no longer built on stadium capacity. They're built on dynamic algorithmic pricing, supply restriction, and high net worth VIP packages. Let's do some examples of what I mean here, because basically they've pivoted. They used to do big arenas with 40, 50, 60,000 seats, and ticket prices were affordable, and they would fill those arenas in a local market, and it would be awesome. Like I said, it would build grassroots MMA. It would, there would be gyms full. It would be good for the local gym scene, the local promotion scene, the local fighters, and they would fill these massive arenas, and tickets would be affordable, so fans could watch the product. UFC 129, 2011. Oh, and by the way, they've pivoted. Now they only do small arenas. I don't know if you guys have noticed this. We're going to talk about some of these numbers. They only do small arenas now. And it's like nobody's talking about that. And like nobody's noticed what the fuck they're doing. I know what they're fucking doing. And we're talking about it right here. UFC 129, 2011, Toronto, Canada. Attendance, 55,000 people. Live gate, $12.07 million. Average ticket price, $220. Stadium era, large capacity, accessible prices, grow regional brand equity. That's what they were doing, and that's what we loved. UFC 205, 2016, Madison Square Garden. They're already starting to lower the arena size, but this one was pivotal. This was in a Madison Square Garden, and attendance 20,400. Live gate, $17.7 million. Average ticket price, $860. Metro pay-per-view shift. Restricted arena seating creates scarcity in Tier 1 markets. UFC 306, 2024, The Sphere. Attendance, 16,024. Live gate, $22 million. Average ticket price, $1,370 per ticket. Spectacle pricing, dynamic surging, and corporate VIP package dominance. UFC 329, just like a month ago. Attendance, 18,000. Live gate, $25 million. Average ticket price, $1,380 a ticket. Yield extraction, maximum revenue from restricted live inventory. Read that table left to right. Attendance collapsed. The gate exploded. The average ticket went from $220 in a stadium to $1,300 in a luxury box. They have engineered scarcity. The fans aren't scarce. We want to go to the events. We want to see a live UFC event, and we want to see them traveling to our fucking cities. But they don't come to our cities anymore. They don't come to our countries anymore if you're outside the United States. And they don't fill big stadiums. They go to small arenas now that can fit 15 to 20,000 people. That way they can charge $1,000 to $1,500 per ticket on average and price out all the actual fans that got them here, that want to watch the sport, that want to support these fighters, that are passionate about this. Let that sink in, because that's a very important distinction to make of why. So a lot of people say, ticket prices are going up because maybe the UFC is greedier, or it's just in general because, cost of living has gone up. And it has. Cost of everything's exploded. But this is engineered by the UFC. This is not on accident. This is on purpose. They are intentionally going to small arenas to drive up ticket prices through scarcity, through manufactured scarcity, to price out all the regular fans that just want to fucking watch. It's ridiculous, and I'm calling it out. One, Dynamic pricing algorithms. Ticketmaster real-time surging sets nosebleed face values at $600 to $1,000 plus. That prices out long-time core consumers before tickets even reach the secondary resale market. They capture the scalp on the way out the door. 2, artificial supply scarcity. Intentionally capping venues at 15 to 20,000 seats instead of stadium configurations. UFC 306 did $22 million on 16,000 people. UFC 129 did $12 million on 55,000. They're going to tell you that's progress. That's not. That's stabbing the fan base in the back. 3, corporate VIP allocations. Lower bowls carved out for casino high rollers, VIP travel packages, and sponsors. Passionate fight night crowds replaced by quiet corporate attendees. The hostile building, the thing that made UFC feel dangerous, is being designed out of existence. Double-sided extraction. Squeeze a $1,000 average ticket out of the fan while simultaneously suppressing fighter payouts to 15 to 20% of revenue. Legacy fans who built the brand through pay-per-view buys and fight night tickets are being priced out in favor of corporate package buyers and site fee subsidies. You were the product. Now you are the inconvenience. We are the inconvenience. Wild, guys. Sorry, I'm getting amped up. This whole thing pisses me off. When you really look into what they're doing and how this has changed over the years and what they're doing to our beloved sport, it makes me sick. Now let's get into the site fee leverage model. This part really makes me mad. This part is infuriating, so buckle up for this one. I'm going to explain their site fee extraction, their apex leverage, the dirty card that they use to make sure that we stay in the apex or we go and get taxpayer money to go to other cities. Because producing an event inside the apex costs virtually nothing, the UFC sets its baseline cost to $0. Then they approach cities with an ultimatum. Pay us $2 to $6 million in site fees to subsidize our show, or we stay in Vegas. Municipalities like Perth, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, and various U.S. tourism boards cut multi-million-dollar checks directly to TKO Group out of public coffers. The money does not usually come from a road repair account with a bow on it. It comes from tourism development taxes, local sales taxes, hotel occupancy taxes, municipal entertainment surcharges collected from residents and local businesses, sports and convention grants from the state development authorities that were supposed to boost local infrastructure. City officials defend it with a bloated economic impacts report. The actual wealth extraction tells a different story. The lion's share of ticket sales, pay-per-view venue, global broadcast rights, and corporate sponsorship revenue leaves the city entirely and hits TKO Group's corporate balance sheet. Local citizens fund the event through tax dollars, get priced out by dynamic ticket algorithms, and receive zero long-term public infrastructure in return. So you heard that, guys. You heard that right. If UFC does come to your city, they come to your city because your city paid them millions and millions of dollars of your money, taxpayer money, to get them to come there, and then they have the audacity to price you out so you can't even go and enjoy this event that you paid for. Paramount is giving them $1.1 billion a year. Then these cities, these governments are taking your money, my money, taxpayer money, and paying them $2 to $6 million to subsidize the event for them to come there. And then they are putting it in a small arena and pricing tickets over $1,000 on average. So none of us can even go to the event that we paid for. That's what the UFC is doing. That is what TKO is doing. That is what this era of combat sports, this monopsony of no competition, is doing to hardcore fight fans like you, like me. That's what's going on. And like I said, the city officials will defend it. None of that money goes back to the city. oh, a little bit's going to hotel owners, whatever. These are all owned by big corporations anyways. Most of the little guys that are getting taxed to death, that are paying for shit like this, it's not going back to them. It's not benefiting them. And like I said, they can't even go watch the event because they're priced out. It's fucking ridiculous. Here's a case file. This one makes me mad. Here's something I want to talk about as an example of the things we don't get by way of this extortion tactic that the UFC has taken to doing. You want to know why we've never went to Hawaii? Dana says it's Hawaii's fault or that it's the weather's fault. He doesn't want to do an outdoor event. Well, we sure as fucking shit did an outdoor event for fucking Trump's birthday, didn't we? We can do an outside event. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with arena size. Has nothing to do with costs. It has to do with Hawaii wouldn't bow to the extortion. This is what happened with a potential Hawaii card. Here's the template. Learn it. Listen to this. Early 2018, Max Holloway is on a dominant featherweight championship run. Demand peaks for a massive stadium event in Aloha Stadium in Honolulu, the promotion's first ever event in the state. Formal negotiations open with the Hawaii Tourism Authority. They travel to Vegas and enter into negotiations with the UFC. The UFC demand delivered in Las Vegas at these negotiations was a non-negotiable $6 million site fee taken directly out of Hawaii's public tourism tax revenue to cover production costs and venue fees. Again, taken out of taxpayer money from Hawaii. They wanted $6 million in taxpayer money to host this event in Hawaii. The Hawaii Tourism Authority countered with $1 million, which would have already been the single largest public grant the Hawaii Tourism Authority had ever issued for any sporting event in Hawaii's history. They offered them the biggest amount they had ever offered before in the history of Hawaii. Because the state refused to divert $6 million in public tax dollars to a private, greedy fucking enterprise like the UFC killed the negotiations and canceled the planned August 4th, 2018 event entirely. Then they lied about why. Here's a quote from Dana White. Hawaii was happening this year and it got shut down by the tourism board. We were ready to go. They couldn't pull it together. Really? They couldn't pull it together, Dana? They couldn't pull it together because they wouldn't give you $6 fucking million of taxpayer money. You guys couldn't pay for your own fucking show a little bit, or better yet, take the $1 million, take all your fucking millions and millions. I am sure you would have broke gates again for that event. So we're talking, you would have probably made a $20 million gate on top of the fact that they would have given you $1 million, on top of all your TV rights deals. You was on ESPN back then. No, they wouldn't bow to your extortion. They wouldn't bow to your precedent, because that's what it is. They can afford to do this. They would have made money on this card, but it's their extortion and they want to set a precedent. They don't want a city to think, well, maybe if we're really nice, or maybe if we negotiate hard enough, or maybe if we talk them out of this. No. That $2 to $6 million, depending on where they're going and what they want to demand, that is extortion. And that is non-negotiable, because if they negotiate, then they set a precedent that you can negotiate with them, and they don't want that. They want my way or the highway. You pay us what we tell you to pay us, or fuck you, we don't come to your city. How about that? That is the play. Oh, so fucking frustrating. That was not a failed local government. That was a failed extortion tactic on public tax dollars, followed by a press conference blame shift onto Hawaiian authorities. The Hawaii incident established the modern scheduling strategy. Local fans and legacy market hubs get completely ignored unless their municipal government agrees to subsidize corporate operations with taxpayer capital. Now let's talk about another tactic. Here's another case study. This UFC Belgrade event they had on August 1st. The other half of the foreign playbook is not a royal subsidy. It is a cheap regional padding. Old model. in 2000, in 2014, 2020, those 2010 eras, export the brand, main card stacked with top 5 and top 10 elite talent, local heroes sprinkled into the mid card, backed by established division gatekeepers. The goal was to build long-term local market value, drive pay-per-view buy-in, and expand international TV rights valuation. So what am I talking about when I say that? Before, in that beautiful era, the 2010s, they would go to one of these markets. They would go to a place like Belgrade or whatever, and they wouldn't pad the card out with all local talent like they do now, not all entry-level guys. They would go and they would still stack that card and put on a good show for that market. They would stack that card with, top 5, top 10 divisional talent. And, like I said, division gatekeepers, things like that, with a few local guys they found, a few local heroes as, some candy and excitement for that local fan base. Now, they build the whole fucking card around entry-level contract local talent. The modern model, fly to venues with site fee subsidies like Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi, or run cheap regional shows like Belgrade, unranked and fridge headliners, plus local debuting regional signees. The goal, fulfill flat rate broadcast hours at minimal expense, zero gate or pay-per-view reliance. The UFC Belgrade August 1st, 2026 headliner, it was headlined by Uros Medic against Daniel Rodriguez, an unranked welterweight match, anchoring a full broadcast card. Then the fill padded almost entirely with local Balkan circuit regional talent making UFC debuts on baseline contracts. The financial play here, massively reduced travel and hotel logistics for US-based corners while fulfilling broadcast hours at maximum corporate margins. Medic knocked out Rodriguez in 30 seconds. Great for him. Great for the building. That is not the point. The point is they can ship a bare minimum broadcast product around the world, call it global expansion, and still collect the paramount hours. Quality versus quantity. Global expansion used to mean delivering elite MMA. Now it means delivering content. The death of the pipeline. By replacing battle-tested regional champions with cheap Contender Series entry-level talent to fill a 42-event broadcast quota, the product feels less like an elite world championship and more like a standardized churn-and-burn content stream. In that 2014 to 2020 era, the talent funnel was scouted like 8 to 12 fight regional belt holders, LFA, CFFC, Titan FC, Jungle Fight, blah, 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 proven local draws. Now, the centralized, their Dana White contender, we've already talked about this, they're 35 to 40% are Contender Series guys on 10 and 10 contracts. The regional circuit in the golden era was active with promotions in small towns, local commissions funded by mid-tier UFC market stops. Now 75% of regional promotions have been wiped out post-2020, local markets abandoned for Apex and mega site fees. Gym economics. In the golden era, fight teams drove prestige, ticket sales, and local momentum. Dedicated mat space for pros made sense. I remember coming up in those times, in those gyms, they were filled with killers, iron sharpening iron, guys fighting actively in local shows. Everybody had a fight coming up. It was filled. Now I go to these gyms and it's all just hobbyists. There's no local regional promotions anymore. It's hobbyists running cardio kickboxing classes and 40 and 50-year-old guys doing BJJ. It's sad, man. Now medical cost, travel, blood work versus $500 purses that you now have to travel to who knows where to even get a regional show has killed the math. Gyms have pivoted to high-ticket hobbyists. The mat culture, dense, bustling, tested sparring rooms, hungry prospects sharpening each other daily. Now, sparring rooms diluted, gym floors dominated by casual fitness and a hobbyist BJJ. After COVID, the UFC used its status as an essential business to keep running in Florida and Las Vegas. Meanwhile, local state athletic commissions shut down smaller promotions for over a year. Over 75% of regional promotions could not survive the overhead, the venue losses, and the canceled ticket sales. When the UFC then stopped touring mid-tier markets, Boise, Omaha, Albuquerque, you get the message, regional commissions lost operational revenue, and local fighters lost the dream of an in-person person tryout when the big circus came to town. I know so many guys who were fighting and who were good back then who just stopped. After COVID, after all the promotions shut down, after there's no more real hope of the UFC coming to town, they just stopped. You know, they got regular jobs, they retired, and they were good, man. Some of these guys were good, but there wasn't a clear path anymore. It didn't make sense anymore. A decade ago, a gym owner could justify losing floor space to a fight team because those guys brought prestige, local ticket sales, and the kind of momentum that attracted new members. Guys, when I came up in those 2010s when I was fighting, that's how it was, man. We were all fighting on local shows constantly every few months. And that drove so many new people to the gym. Then the gym could dedicate pro team space, pro practice times, things like that, because they got such an influx of members from the prestige that we brought by fighting locally every few months in events that were priced to where people could afford to go to them. That's not the case anymore. So now logistically it doesn't make sense to have a pro fight team or carve out pro mat time, and now it's just hobbyists. Today, medical clearances, blood work, cornerman licenses, and travel for a $500 regional purse make amateur/early pro fighting a massive net loss financial drain. The culture adapted the only way it could. Gyms survive on high-ticket casual membership, fitness kickboxing, hobbyist jiu-jitsu, while true prospect development becomes financially unsustainable for small-town coaches. The sharpening iron density of the 2010s is gone. The room got quieter. The talent got thinner. Now the kit monopoly, they did not just kill the calendar, they killed the side hustle and kept regional fighters alive. Pre-2015, regional fighters entering the UFC could earn $20,000 to $50,000 plus per fight selling shorts real estate to local sponsors, money that funded training camps and coaches. Then the Reebok deal, then Venom, centralizing outfitting into global corporate deals replaced independent sponsorships with flat-tiered outfitting payouts. $4,000 for 1 to 3 fight UFC veterans, stripping away the financial cushion that allowed fighters to train full-time. You take the shorts, you take the regions, you take the commissions, you take the veterans, you replace them with 12 and 12 kids who can't say no. That's not an evolution. That's a capture. That's strict mining the sport for profit. The UFC desperately needs competition. Every number in this video exists for one reason. A company with no rival does not have to care, not about card quality, not about Boise, not about a 22-year-old's ACL, not about whether you can afford to sit in the building you helped fill for 20 years. Monopsony. Monopsony is the word. One buyer of fighter labor, one seller of elite MMA. That is the whole sport, and TKO knows it. So here's the part where I stop lighting a match on all this and start telling you where to put your money, your attention, and your Saturday night. MVP is already stirring the pot. Jake Paul's most valuable promotions spent 5 years as a boxing company. In May 2026, they walked into MMA on Netflix with Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano at the Intuit Dome. Rousey finished it in 17 seconds. Francis Ngannou knocked out Felipe Lins. The card averaged about 9.3 million US viewers, and they spent the next week reminding Hunter Campbell that they outdrew the White House UFC card on average audience. Was it a novelty? Partly, yeah. Was it also proof that a fighter first pitch plus a real platform can move numbers the Apex cannot? Yeah, absolutely. Then, in late July, MVP announced it was merging with the Professional Fighters League, PFL, and operating the combined MMA company under the MVP banner. Paul's line was not so subtle. They started MVP to disrupt a broken model, to give fighters fair pay and a bigger stage. Joining forces with the PFL, he said, accelerates that vision by a decade. Now, guys, you don't have to love Jake Paul. You don't have to pretend Rousey Carano was a title eliminator or that it mattered. That doesn't matter. you do have to understand what a well-capitalized second buyer of fighter labor does to a monopsony. It gives veterans somewhere else to go. It gives prospects leverage. It gives TKO a reason to remember what a stacked fight night card looks like. Now, we have Scott Coker. Scott Coker. I've been talking too long, guys. The throat's getting dry. We have Scott Coker coming back to shake the cage. If MVP is allowed new money, Scott Coker is the guy who has actually done this before. Strikeforce, Bellator, the last two promotions that made the UFC nervous enough to buy one and outlast the other. In May 2026, Coker announced a yet-to-be-named new MMA promotion with $60 million in initial funding. Co-founded with Peter Levin of Griffin Gaming Partners, the same friend who is an early Strikeforce investor. Additional investors include Upper Deck, Steve Kaplan, Tony Hawk, Swimmy Minimi, and others with NFL and NBA ownership stakes. Launch targets, first quarter 2027, 12 events that year, tournaments and super fights, not a tournament-only gimmick. Events planned for Asia, Europe, San Jose, and a territory they have not yet announced. Brand launch event is September 14th, 2026 in New York City. That's less than a month away from this recording. They're going to name the streaming partner and the whole reveal. The executive team is not a random podcast group. It's Kevin Kay, the Spike TV / Tough Architect, as Chief Content Officer, Tom Fox from Nike and Gatorade as COO, Rich Chow, a lifer from Bellator, Strikeforce, Elite XC, and Rumble on the Rock, and Athletes Relations. He's in Athletes Relations, and Steve Bornstein, former ESPN and NFL Network chief on the advisory board. Coker said the quiet part out loud. I feel like there's a little bit of a funk in MMA space right now. Let's go stir it up. The thing with MVP, their show, they're stirring it up. It gets people excited, it gets people to root for somebody, and then we're going to do the same. He also said the sport needs a little bit of shaking the cage. Yes, it fucking does, Scott Coker. It fucking does. Coker's own framing from the launch of this league is about returning the integrity of competition, respect for athletes, and sharing their journeys, building something that belongs to the athletes and to the fans who live and breathe this sport. This is marketing. It is also the opposite of a 42 event content quota. Watch what they actually book. Watch what they actually pay, but show up. You can be skeptical. Be skeptical of what they book. Be skeptical of what they pay, but show up. Watch. Give them your support, please. Watch the September 14th launch. Talk about it. Share it amongst your friends. Make the algorithm notice that the room is not just an Apex studio. What competition actually does. Competition is how you get ranked fighters back on fight nights. It is how a regional belt holder gets a bidding war instead of a 10-10 take it or leave it contract. It is how a gym in Albuquerque justifies a fight team again. It is how TKO's fighter share number, stuck in the teens for a generation, finally has to move. You do not have to pick a jersey. Support both. MVP and Coker. 2 buyers is the beginning of a market. 1 buyer is what you've been watching die in real time this whole time. We have new buyers of fighter product now. Let's get behind them. Let's support them, because competition is what is going to get the UFC back to the UFC that we knew and loved, that we grew up watching. Builders versus extraction artists. The tragedy of modern MMA is not just the business got bigger, it is that the fundamental ethos driving the promotion shifted from sport building to corporate extraction. Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta were ruthless and corporate as they come. They also bought a banned bankrupt sport for $2 million, lost over $40 million in casino money, holding it afloat, sat ringside at every card, and prioritized prestige, big fight feel, and world championship legitimacy, blood and risk. Fight fans first. TKO is a publicly traded conglomerate. Private equity does not care about fighter legacy or belt prestige. TKO operates to satisfy Wall Street via quarterly EBITDA margins, share buybacks, and low overhead broadcast quotas. At the end of the day, It's a damn shame. As corporate and bloodthirsty as the Fertittas were, at the very least, they actually loved the sport. They were fight fans sitting ringside at every show, taking real financial risks because they wanted to build the premier combat sports spectacle on earth. TKO doesn't give a single solitary fuck about martial arts or its legacy. To them, it's not a sport. It's a standardized content mill. The fighters are just interchangeable line items. The fans are just data points to be algorithmically squeezed at the box office. And the belts are just props to fill broadcast quotas. We didn't lose interest in MMA. The corporate machine just extracted the soul out of it. Laying this out is not turning my back on the sport. It's respecting the intelligence of the fans who have felt this shift for years and never had the business data to explain why. You have the data now. You know what's happening now. If you watch this video, you have a very clear picture of exactly what the fuck is going on behind the scenes now. Watch the cards that treat fighters like fighters. Show up for the promotions that still have to earn you. On September 14th, pay attention to what Scott Coker puts on stage in New York. Keep an eye on what MVP is doing with the PFL roster. And the next time Dana shrugs at a 3-ranked, fighter night, a 3-ranked fight card night inside a soundstage, remember, they can only do this for as long as we keep pretending there is no other door. There is another door. Walk through it. Walk through it. If this made you angry, it should have. Send this to at least one person who still thinks the Apex is just convenient, or that it's just for cost saving, or that the UFC is going to get their act together. Send this to your buddy. Send this to a person. Send this to another content creator arguing against my points. Send this to any of your favorite podcasts. Tag your favorite podcast hosts that are UFC bagmen who are corporate nut huggers who would argue this point and say that I'm wrong. Send this video to them. Tag them. Bombard them. I dare anybody to argue with my points in this video, to argue that the UFC is not wealth extracting, that TKO is not wealth extracting at the tax money and at the soul of the sport. Stabbing us fans in the back, pricing us out while taking our tax money and pricing us out of the very product while watering it down that we love and telling us not to support, MVP, not to support Scott Coker. They're clowns, that we don't have competition. They don't have competition as long as we don't let them have competition. That's an us thing. And I say we stop letting them stab us in the back and we give them the competition that they deserve to have, that they've earned through their apathy, through their corporate strip mining of the sport that we love, of the sport that we supported for the last 30 years. We've been supporting them and they're going to do us like this. Let's give them competition. Let's support Jake Paul and MVP. Like I said, you don't have to like him. I don't. But support what he's doing. Support MVP. Support Scott Coker. Watch. Follow what the fighters are doing. We have to get people in this space to support what they're doing. We have to get people in this space to cover what they're doing. We have to get people in this space to interview the fighters from those cards, to build their audience, to show their personality, to show what they can offer, to build a fan base, to help their social following. That's on us in this space. That is on people like me, and the channel is way, way, way bigger than me. I'm just a small, small cog in this machine. But it is up to us, and it's up to you, the fans, me, the fans, us, the fans, to support these other promotions, to watch and spread the word, and give the UFC competition so they get off their fucking asses and start stacking cards again, start going to big arenas again, and start making the tickets affordable so we can go watch the shows in the promotion that we helped build. That's all it is, guys. That's the end. Rant over. That's it. We're pivoting to the positive message, even though I'm pissed off and I don't really know about giving a positive message. You know what? When you're pissed off, go blow off steam in the gym. That's a good thing to do. I got to stop shaking my camera. But go blow off steam. Go blow off steam in the gym. That's what I'm going to do after this. After I get this done. Stop shaking. After I get this done and get this put together and get this scheduled for upload, I'm going to go blow off some steam in the gym. That's a good thing. When you're pissed off, just go blow off some steam. That's good for your mental health. And guys, I had, let me tell you about a meal I made today. It was actually like life-changing what I had for dinner today. Blew me out of the water. I like to just kind of throw things together. I hate looking up recipes, so I just kind of, fuck around with whatever I have. But I try to eat clean, because eating clean, it has such an effect on your mental health, guys. If you're feeling, stuck or anxious or down, I am telling you, some of the biggest things that you can do is just getting in the gym. And you don't have to lift heavy or go crazy or kill yourself and do HIIT exercises, but just get in, do, moderate good exercise, walk on a stair climber or a treadmill for 45 minutes, lift some weights, do, 3 sets of 8, rep range is a good rep range and it doesn't kill you. Take as long between sets as you need to do clean, steady sets, but get in a good workout and eat clean. Enough of this processed garbage. You don't want to be living off of ramen noodles and canned chili and McDonald's and things like that. All this processed stuff, it's so bad for you. So if you eat clean and you exercise, that's some of the biggest mental health advice I could possibly give you. That and talking to family, reaching out to family, talking to friends, loved ones, making new friends, a hobby where you meet new friends. It can be life-changing. But I'm going to tell you about this meal. So I took ground elk meat and I sauteed it with a bunch of like cut up bell peppers, onions, and some mushrooms. And so I sauteed all that together with a little bit of soy sauce, some chilecito pepper, some ground pepper, some minced garlic, some Creole seasoning. I love Creole seasoning. Some garlic powder. I think that's all this. Oh, and a little bit of Lowry's all seasoning salt. So saute that, mix that all together. And then I took zucchini noodles and I put zucchini noodles in there and about half a brick of Philadelphia cream cheese and made this like garlicky elk zoodles, like garlic elk zoodles. Like, oh my God, it was so good. The numbers on that were about 580-ish calories for a half a pan of that. I ate half the pan, my son ate the other half. So my half was about 580-ish calories and over 50 grams, like almost 60 grams of protein. Super delicious, super high protein, just good. Eating, wild elk, I don't know, man, it just does something to you. Eating wild animals, it just does something to you. It makes, man, I felt so powerful. It's almost like I had a gym pump after that. It was great. So, guys, get in there. Eat some good food, make yourself, it's not hard. That took me like 15 minutes. It took me like 15 minutes to throw that meal together. And it's not hard to just eat clean, awesome food that fuels your body right, fuels your brain right. So get out there, guys. Eat some food that fuels your mind and your body. Get a little bit of time in at the gym. And, if you haven't talked to your brothers or your sisters or your mom or your dad or grandma, grandpa, if you haven't talked to someone in a while, give them a call, talk to them, reach out, see how they're doing. I promise you, it's going to feed your soul. It's going to do something for you right in there. It's good for you. And we don't do it enough. We're so disconnected in this day and age. We're more surrounded with people than we've ever been before, but we're so disconnected. And it breeds just depression and anxiety and anger. And we've got to get out of that. We've got to help each other up. We've got to spread positivity. We got to, go meet strangers. Go sit at your local pub and talk to the guy next to you. Talk to the girl next to you. Flirt with the cute girl at the end of the bar. Whatever. Do all three. Talk to the people next to you and flirt with the cute girl down the bar. I promise you, this is going to be good for you. Just be friendly. Just go in with a friendly attitude and talk to people and be an open person. Be open to experience life and positivity and spread it. That's the best thing we can do. I promise you. I know this is a little odd after I just spent the last hour yelling at you, but we're going to try to spread some positivity now. I'm already, even just talking about this puts me in a better mood. So I'm going to go kill it in the gym. You guys go squash it in the gym, squash some good eating and some good social vibes. And guys, yeah, that's it for the video. Hopefully this one blows up and hits 1 million people, because I think this is a message that absolutely needs to be spread throughout the combat sports space. This is the single most important video that could be talked about right now, I think, but I'm biased. Anyways, guys, take care.